December 1942. In a gleaming conference room in Berlin, Adolf Hitler sat with his top generals, swirling coffee thick with sugar, flicking ash from his cigarette onto the polished table. Outside, the war was sweeping across Europe at a pace he believed unstoppable. Germany had conquered France, Poland, Norway. The Maginot Line was already a joke. Yet today, the discussion wasn't about tactics or tanks, it was about... Hitler scoffed, a sneer curling across his face. They only make cars, televisions, household appliances. A civilian nation, naive and untested in war. How could they possibly beat us? His generals nodded, their eyes bright with overconfidence. In their minds, the United States was distant, weak, and irrelevant. A nation of factories churning out consumer goods, incapable of mounting a serious military threat. But at that very moment, an irony of history was quietly unfolding. Hitler laughed, oblivious to the fact that in the factories of Detroit, Chicago, and Los Angeles, assembly lines originally built for cars and appliances were silently transforming into war machines, the likes of which the world had never seen. Machines capable of turning the so-called sleeping giant into a global industrial powerhouse, poised to crush even the most sophisticated German military hardware. In the months that followed, Hitler's mockery would turn into horror as the skies above Europe filled with tens of thousands of aircraft, hundreds of thousands of tanks, and naval fleets in constant motion produced at a pace, scale, and efficiency the Nazis could never imagine. Every plane, every Sherman tank, every Liberty ship wasn't just a weapon. They were nodes in a network, part of a strategy Hitler couldn't see, a strategy his finest generals couldn't anticipate. This is the story of how a nation dismissed, underestimated, and mocked became the industrial juggernaut that would redefine modern warfare. Hitler's arrogance blinded him to the magnitude of what America was building, an invisible web of production and coordination that would decide the war long before any tank round was fired or bomber dropped its payload. To grasp the scale of what was coming, one must first understand the state of American industry in 1941. When Japan struck Pearl Harbor in December, the United States entered the war with a military almost entirely unprepared for large-scale conflict. Detroit factories were still focused on making cars. Small workshops in Chicago were producing televisions, appliances, and consumer electronics. Army marched into Europe and North Africa without the stockpiles of weaponry Germany had amassed, without Panther or Tiger tanks, without thousands of Me-109 seconds, and lacking decades of European combat experience. But America had something Germany could not ignore: nearly limitless industrial potential. President Franklin D. Roosevelt understood that to face Germany and Japan, the United States had to transform its entire civilian economy into a war machine. His famous call for the arsenal of democracy was not rhetoric, it was a blueprint. Every factory, engineer, and worker, from Detroit to Los Angeles, became a link in a nationwide war production chain. William Knudsen, formerly of General Motors and later deputy commander of the War Production Board, was tasked with converting automobile assembly lines into tank and artillery factories. Henry Kaiser, renowned for civilian ships and oil tankers, was charged with mass-producing Liberty ships, simple, fast vessels that became the backbone of Allied logistics. Together with thousands of engineers, machinists, and technicians, they turned America into the world's largest, fastest, and most efficient factory of war. Meanwhile, Germany still relied on technological finesse and individual quality. Panthers, Tigers, Me-262 jets. They were marvels of engineering, but limited in production, painstaking to assemble, and constrained by scarce resources. In contrast, America produced thousands of tanks and hundreds of bombers each month. The paradox was clear. Germany had superior engineering but limited numbers. America had less sophisticated machinery but overwhelming scale and speed. This paradox became undeniable on the battlefields of North Africa. German forces faced U.S. units armed with equipment that, individually, seemed inferior. Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, brilliant tactician though he was, quickly recognized he was confronting a new type of war. Victory depended not on blitzkrieg-style brilliance alone, but on industrial capacity, mass replacement of materiel, and the scale of national production mobilization. Within just 18 months, the United States transformed from a nation building cars into a war machine, producing tanks, aircraft, and naval vessels at an unprecedented rate. This was the context in which Hitler laughed and underestimated America, unaware that the Detroit assembly lines he mocked were quietly preparing a force that would soon dominate the skies and battlefields of Europe. When B-17 seconds and B-24 seconds began patrolling European airspace, when thousands of Sherman tanks rolled into North Africa and Italy, Hitler's ridicule would turn into terror. A nation he had dismissed had turned its industrial might into an unstoppable weapon, proving that, in modern warfare, organization, scale, and production speed could outweigh individual technological superiority. By early 1942, the United States was no longer producing cars for civilians. The transformation of American industry was underway, and nowhere was it more dramatic than in Detroit, the heart of the automotive empire. Henry Ford's sprawling factories, once the symbol of consumer convenience, were now humming with the sounds of war presses, stamping steel armor, furnaces forging cannon barrels, assembly lines rolling out Sherman tanks at a pace no German engineer could imagine. Every factory floor became a symphony of efficiency. Conveyor belts carried tank hulls past hundreds of workers, each performing specialized tasks in perfect rhythm. Engines were assembled with precision. Transmissions welded into place. Turrets mounted. Radios installed, turning raw steel into combat-ready Shermans within days. Where Hitler saw a nation of amateurs, Roosevelt saw opportunity. The assembly line that had once produced the Model T now produced death for Germany, but at a scale that was unimaginable in Berlin. Aircraft production underwent a similarly radical metamorphosis. Boeing, Lockheed, and Consolidated began producing B-17 Flying Fortresses and B-24 Liberators, long-range bombers capable of reaching deep into Axis territory. At one factory in Long Beach, California, workers built a plane every 63 minutes, a pace so astonishing that German intelligence could scarcely comprehend it. Factories ran 24/7, with thousands of skilled and unskilled workers, including women, many stepping into roles never before available, contributing to the war effort. Even supply chains were revolutionized. Raw materials, engines, electronics, tires, and even small screws were shipped with military precision across the country. Railroads, previously transporting consumer goods, now moved tanks, artillery, and ammunition to ports, where they would join fleets bound for North Africa, Europe, and the Pacific. Hitler, who had mocked American factories as producing toys, would soon face a reality in which the sleeping giant had awoken armed, organized, and unstoppable. By late 1943, the impact of American industrial mobilization became impossible to ignore. The skies above Europe began to fill not with a few dozen reconnaissance planes, but with entire armies of bombers. On any given day, over 1,000 B-17 seconds and B-24 seconds could take to the air, their formation stretching for miles, escorted by squadrons of long-range P-51 Mustangs. German airfields, designed to accommodate tactical battles, suddenly faced a new problem: sheer numbers. Luftwaffe fighters could not engage every bomber. Flak batteries could not destroy them all. Every mission was a testament not to individual pilot heroics, but to industrial might planes arriving faster than the Luftwaffe could destroy. Pilots trained, refueled, and sent again within days. The psychological impact on German leadership was immediate. Hitler's initial ridicule gave way to disbelief as reports flooded in. The Americans were not just fighting, they were overwhelming. The skies were filled with formations of bombers that moved like living fleets, each aircraft linked by radio, coordinated with precision. German anti-aircraft defenses, no matter how technologically sophisticated, struggled to respond to waves of planes arriving continuously. Behind these operations was meticulous planning. American strategic bombers were not deployed randomly. They were part of an integrated system. Pilots, navigators, gunners, and ground crews all relied on coordination that Germany could scarcely imagine. Airfields in England, North Africa, and Italy became hubs of logistical brilliance, supporting missions across the continent. Each bomber carried enough firepower, fuel, and trained crew to strike industrial centers, supply lines, and military targets deep inside Axis territory. And yet, the numbers alone were not the full story. Each bomber, each plane, each tank rolling onto a beach in Sicily or Normandy was part of a broader network, a network made possible by the same principle that had made Sherman tanks so effective: communication, coordination, and mass production. Just as the radios connected American tanks on the battlefield, the Air Force's command structures connected hundreds of planes into cohesive formations, capable of executing complex missions that German generals could only watch helplessly. The skies, once a symbol of German air superiority, became a theater where American industrial power manifested in living, moving form. By 1944, 100,000 planes, tanks, and supporting vehicles could be mobilized across the Atlantic in ways Hitler's generals could not fathom. The laughable civilians making cars had become a force capable of altering the very trajectory of the war. The first real taste of American industrial might came in the deserts of North Africa. November 1942. Operation Torch. When American troops landed near Casablanca and Algiers, the Germans and Italians expected a modest force, perhaps a few thousand soldiers, a handful of tanks, and limited air support. They did not anticipate what would arrive. Fully equipped divisions, rolling off landing craft like waves crashing onto the shore, backed by a logistical machine operating on a scale unseen in Europe. Every Sherman tank, every half-track, every artillery piece carried the imprint of American industrial precision. Unlike the Germans, whose units often suffered from shortages of radios, ammunition, and spare parts, the Americans had prepared for every eventuality. When a Sherman's track broke, a replacement was on hand within hours. When a radio failed, the crew switched to a functioning set without missing a beat. Supplies flowed from port to front lines with an efficiency that confounded Axis commanders. The German Afrika Korps, experienced and disciplined, could not comprehend what they faced. Their commanders, trained to fight adversaries limited by supply and equipment, suddenly found themselves confronting a foe that could replace losses faster than they could inflict them. Every attack met not just resistance but counterattack. Tanks appeared from unexpected angles, coordinated through radios that German doctrine said should not have existed in such numbers. Air power amplified this advantage. The Allies' growing fleet of long-range bombers, escorted by P-38 seconds and P-51 seconds, began to dominate the skies. German reconnaissance planes reported American formations so vast they seemed to stretch to the horizon. Supply convoys were harassed from above, ports shelled, and fortifications destroyed with surgical precision. Each strike, meticulously coordinated through radio networks, demonstrated a frightening truth. This was not a war of individual brilliance. It was a war won by the ability to produce, communicate, and coordinate on an unprecedented scale. The psychological impact on the German command was immediate. They could measure the enemy's numbers and firepower, but they could not measure the invisible network connecting every American unit. Each Sherman on the ground, each bomber in the sky, was linked to a system that Germany could neither destroy nor comprehend. By the time the Afrika Korps retreated, the lesson was clear. Superior weapons mattered less than the ability to mobilize and connect them. By 1943, the war had moved to the Italian peninsula. Mountains, narrow passes, and fortified positions seemed to favor the defenders. Hitler believed that terrain would negate the Americans' industrial advantages. He underestimated the ingenuity born from necessity and the relentless momentum of American production. The Italian campaign became a proving ground for the principles first demonstrated in North Africa. German tanks advanced in coordination with artillery, engineers, and infantry, all linked through radio networks. Unlike German units, which struggled to maintain communication across ridgelines and valleys, American forces operated as a single organism. When one battalion encountered heavy resistance, supporting units, sometimes miles away, could maneuver into position within hours. Air support provided another critical layer of coordination. B-17 seconds and B-24 seconds struck targets identified in real time by ground observers, while P-51 seconds escorted bombers and interdicted German reinforcements. Forward air controllers, communicating via radio, ensured that every strike was timely, precise, and devastating. The Germans, relying on visual signals and outdated AM radios, could only watch as their positions were systematically dismantled. The Battle of Monte Cassino became a case study in American coordination and adaptability. German defenders, confident that the mountainous terrain would slow the Allies, found themselves overwhelmed not by superior firepower alone, but by the ability of American units to act in unison. Tanks, infantry, and artillery struck in concert, often from directions the Germans did not anticipate. Radios ensured that units separated by miles could share intelligence instantly, call for support, and adjust tactics on the fly. This campaign drove home a lesson that would resonate for the remainder of the war. In modern warfare, speed, coordination, and the ability to connect units across vast distances could outweigh the quality of armor or weaponry. American soldiers on the ground, whether tankers or infantry, operated with the confidence that no matter the challenge, they were never truly alone. Every movement, every strike, every advance was part of a vast, interconnected system, one that Hitler had mocked as civilian tinkering, only to discover too late that it was the engine of Allied victory. The 6th of June, 1944, Normandy. The day Hitler had long mocked as impossible, the Allies launching an amphibious invasion across the English Channel arrived with a force beyond imagination. Over 156,000 troops, 5,000 ships, and more than 11,000 aircraft filled the sky and the waters. For German commanders, the scale was incomprehensible. Intelligence reports could not convey the reality. The sky was a living, moving wall of planes, dropping paratroopers behind enemy lines, providing reconnaissance, and hammering German positions with unrelenting precision. Air supremacy was no accident. It was the product of American industrial might, production schedules that churned out bombers faster than Germany could destroy them, and networks that ensured every unit knew its role. Fighter escorts shielded bombers from Luftwaffe interception. Forward controllers communicated with infantry, landing on the beaches and tanks advancing inland. Every Sherman tank rolling off the landing craft was linked to the larger operation via radio networks that Germany had no answer to. On Omaha Beach, soldiers moved through a hail of machine gun fire and artillery, but the chaos was mitigated by coordination unseen in previous conflicts. Naval bombardments adjusted in real time based on reports from radio-equipped units. Tanks, infantry, and engineers advanced in concert, overcoming obstacles that should have stalled them for days. The Germans could not predict where the next wave would strike, or how quickly reinforcements could arrive. The sky, filled with 100,000 planes and buzzing with synchronized purpose, became the ultimate instrument of strategic surprise. For Hitler, the images and reports must have seemed surreal. He had dismissed American industrial capacity as inferior, a civilian workshop, incapable of producing the tools of modern warfare at a pace to challenge the Wehrmacht. And yet, there it was, an invasion of Normandy, powered by the combined might of production, coordination, and air power, executed with a precision that turned mockery into catastrophe. In the weeks following D-Day, The German army faced a nightmare of continuous engagement. American and Allied forces poured into France with a velocity that shocked even the most seasoned commanders. German tanks, accompanied by infantry, artillery, and air support, advanced as a single, integrated force. Each tank communicated its position, spotted threats, and coordinated attacks in ways German doctrine had long deemed impossible. By August 1944, the Allies had liberated Paris. But the story was not one of isolated battles. It was a symphony of industrial and technological might, performed at a scale that Germany could not match. Entire German divisions were encircled, their attempts at counterattack neutralized before they could coalesce. Radio networks allowed American commanders to redirect forces instantly, exploiting weak points and anticipating German maneuvers. Air power amplified the effect. Fighter bombers tracked retreating columns, artillery strikes were called in on moving targets, and logistical nodes were systematically destroyed, leaving German units isolated and starving for coordination. Every Sherman tank and every bomber was a node in a network that allowed the Allies to see, react, and strike faster than Germany could respond. The psychological impact was devastating. German commanders, trained to rely on hierarchy and centralized control, now faced an enemy operating with decentralized autonomy, yet perfectly synchronized. Every Sherman could act as a command unit. Every plane could relay real-time intelligence. By the time German officers realized the scope of the Allied advantage, the front had already crumbled. From the hedgerows of Normandy to the plains of northern France, the lesson was brutally clear. Superior weapons, tanks, and armor meant nothing if they could not communicate. The Americans had proven that connection and coordination could defeat even the most formidable individual platforms. Hitler's mockery of American industry had blinded him to the true power of the Allies. A vast, coordinated machine, turning production into precision, numbers into networks, and chaos into victory. By early 1945, the Allied advance had reached the Rhine, and German forces were stretched to their breaking point. The Americans, now battle-hardened and operating with lessons learned from Normandy, France, and the Low Countries, applied a doctrine that merged industrial capacity with battlefield coordination in ways Germany could not hope to match. The 1st and 9th Armies moved as interconnected units. Tanks, infantry, artillery, and aircraft shared real-time information through radio networks that covered hundreds of miles. Every Sherman tank was a node in this vast network, reporting enemy positions, adjusting fire missions, and calling in reinforcements instantly. Field commanders could form ad hoc task forces, confident that every unit, whether a tank platoon or an artillery battery, would act in harmony. The German military, in contrast, relied on fractured communication lines. Telephones and dispatch riders became useless as American aircraft destroyed bridges, roads, and infrastructure. Fug-5 radios could not penetrate the chaos, and many German tanks remained isolated, unable to respond to rapidly changing battlefield conditions. Attempts to regroup or counterattack were disjointed, arriving piecemeal and meeting overwhelming resistance. The capture of Remagen Bridge in March 1945 epitomized this coordination. When American forces discovered the Ludendorff Bridge intact, radio reports reached headquarters within minutes. Commands cascaded across units, allowing multiple divisions to exploit the opportunity before the Germans could respond. Counterattacks failed because German units could not coordinate. The Americans, connected across the battlefield, could shift forces instantaneously. Here, the invisible advantage superior communications, born of industrial foresight and technological innovation, proved decisive. Sherman tanks were more than weapons. They were command centers, reconnaissance units, and instruments of battlefield dominance. The sky, once filled with 100,000 planes over Normandy, now guided the synchronized ground forces that would crush the German front. By April 1945, Germany was in collapse. Berlin fell. The Third Reich crumbled, and Hitler's dreams of invincible armored forces lay in ruins. Yet the story was not only one of tanks or aircraft, it was a story of connectivity, coordination, and industrial ingenuity. American industry had produced not just tanks and planes, but a networked force. Every Sherman tank carried radios, linking it to every other tank, every artillery battery, and every supporting unit. Every bomber, every fighter, every forward controller in the sky worked as part of a single, synchronized system. German forces, despite superior armor in some cases, fought in isolation. Their victories were local and temporary, their defeats systemic and catastrophic. The lessons of this war echoed beyond the battlefield. Technological superiority in the form of armor or guns was insufficient without communication. Connection became the decisive factor. The Allied ability to coordinate, to act as a unified organism, turned numbers into power and production into strategy. 100,000 planes filling the sky was not merely a show of force. It was a demonstration of the industrial capacity and organizational genius that had been underestimated by Hitler from the start. Post-war analysis confirmed what the Germans had failed to grasp. Every Sherman tank was a node in the first truly networked battlefield system, and the principles learned in 1942, 1945 would shape modern warfare. Network-centric operations, rapid communication, and decentralized decision-making were now the hallmarks of military success. The side with superior communication would always defeat the side relying solely on superior platforms. Hitler's mockery of American industry, once a casual dismissal, had blinded him to a reality that American production, organization, and technological foresight could create an army that was more than the sum of its parts. Victory did not belong to the strongest tanks, the deadliest planes, or the largest guns. It belonged to the force that could connect, coordinate, and act as one. In the end, it was not 88mm guns or Panther tanks that won the war. It was the 181 pounds of radios inside every Sherman, the factories in Detroit and Chicago, and the invisible networks that turned industrial might into battlefield intelligence. Hitler watched too late as 100,000 planes filled the sky and American forces moved with the precision of a machine beyond comprehension. A final, undeniable proof that connection, not individual superiority, determines the outcome of modern warfare.